President Biden hunkering down with advisors at Camp David to prep for Thursday's CNN presidential debate. But some top Democrats, including former President Barack Obama, are reportedly expressing doubts about his strategy and his chances for winning in November. Karl Rove, former White House Deputy Chief of Staff, also a Fox News contributor, joins us now. Good morning, Karl. You know, this story pops up in the New York Magazine. What Obama is whispering to Biden, the president's plan to save their legacy from Trump. Here's an excerpt of it. Though his anxiety about the election is real, in the words of one Obama friend, the ex-president's concerns sounded a lot like those of other top Democrats. Those who are in regular touch with Obama say these nerves are not a reflection of any particular angst about Biden or his team, but of the broader reality. The country is closely divided, the media landscape is fractured, and Donald Trump may very well win. Your thoughts heading into Thursday and maybe this angst from Democrats?
Well, it's been there for a long while because they're seeing the same thing that the rest of the country is, which is he's suffering in office. They also are seeing public reaction to the economy, to the cost of living, to people finding it hard at the end of the month to take that paycheck and pay all the bills that are that they've encumbered during that month. So yeah, my view of the Obama wing of the Democratic Party is they had their doubts about him in 2015. Remember, he was a sitting vice president, and the president of the United States said, "I'm not going to support him in the 2016 election. I'm going to support Hillary Clinton." And there was tension already. That created more tension, but they've always had their doubts about his ability to win, and he won in 2016. He won in 2016. But actually, he won in 2020 after not being a candidate in 2016, but they've had their doubts ever since, I suspect.
And I think that comes through, right? And at first, Karl, you would only see that said off the record. Then it was aides say, and then there were actually people just saying it on the record, trying to get attention. Right. You get the attention of the campaign. So now they're in debate prep. And here we go. Bob Bauer is one of the people prepping Biden. He did an interview with Politico Playbook Deep Dive. Here's what he said about how it's going.
I would say in all of the debate preps, and whether it was a Trump debate prep or Gore Bradley or others that I've done, you cannot be afraid of laying down on the table something that your candidate that you're preparing this for won't like. That could be something that's personally insulting. That's something that can be completely false about a policy position that they've taken.
So we know that that is maybe a little bit of a strategy. And just one last thing here. Monica Alba and Carol Lee said this. There's an NBC headline that Biden debate prep strategy is be prepared for two different Trumps. If Trump is more sedate than incensed, the goal for Biden will be to elicit what his aides see as the true Trump. So it sounds like possibly they're both going to try to do that.
Well, yeah, it was interesting. I wrote my column last week in the Journal on debate, and I talked to 5 Republicans who'd been involved in debate prep for various candidates and 3 Democrats. And what was interesting was they all agreed that the question for Biden was which Trump was going to show up. Was it going to be the wild Trump we saw in the first 2020 debate, interrupting, yelling loud, or was it going to be a more calm one? And they said, every one of them said that Biden would have to prepare for both instances and have a strategy for both. And obviously the instance is if it's wild, take advantage of it. If he's calm, try and goad him into becoming the wild one. So I thought that was a pretty interesting universal reaction from everybody. With regard to Trump, everybody assumed that he would attack. But some people said, how much time will he spend on explaining what he would do in a second term? It's fine to go after Biden on the cost of living, on his handling of Afghanistan, on Hunter Biden to some degree. But the question was, would he leave a sense of here's what I'm going to do in a second term? And they all thought the 3 or 4 that brought that up all felt that it was really important that Trump have some sense of what his second act was going to be in order to seal the deal in the debate.
We thought we were going whiteboardless, and thank God you came with all the details.
You asked for a whiteboard, you get a whiteboard, my friend.
All right, Karl, thanks for joining us.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.